I'm Ryan. Some people hate conservatives.
I'm Ryan. Some people hate the liberals. We'll discuss their reasons when we return to beer and politics.
You know, Betty White really is the greatest Golden Girl. Choosy parents. Choose Jif. He's so mean. He really is. Hey Ryan, are we out of partisan again? Welcome again to another episode of Beer and Politics. We are your most reputable hosts, Ryan and Ryan. Today we're going to be talking about why some people hate conservatives and why some people hate liberals. But of course, before we do, we are going to have a beer tasting. What do we have today?
So first off, we're going to talk about this style. It is another stout. It means it's going to typically have some of that roasty flavor, that malty flavor that we really like. It's going to be deep, darker flavors. It's not going to have a lot of hops. But today specifically, we are trying Ballast Point's Red Velvet Nitro. This is a golden oatmeal stout with beets and chocolate. So the first thing I'm noticing is how not stouty this looks.
I was going to say, it doesn't look golden, nor does it look like a stout.
No.
It's very red.
No, this definitely looks beety,
Yes.
I would say. So why don't you take a sip and let's see what we think.
Wow. Okay, first of all, it's very sweet.
Yes.
But not like your traditional sweetness of a stout, which might be like chocolatey and very sugary. This is more of a natural, like, beety
I was going to say, I bet it's beety. Yeah.
Yes.
The beet.
It's also, the one thing I have noticed is, despite it doesn't look like a stout, at the kind of end of it, there is that little bite that you might get from something like a Guinness or something like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how light in color. The color here is basically, it looks like it's all from the beets. This is the lightest colored stout I think I've seen. Also, it's a nitro, so it is really smooth. The nitro is very, very low on this even. So it's a really, really soft feel. But yeah, you talked about that sweetness of the beet. I think that's about it. And I think Red Velvet is an appropriate name for this beer.
It definitely tastes like what you might imagine Red Velvet might taste like.
If you can't see, they got cake and desserts on here. I think that's, again, an appropriate label.
It'd be a good dessert beer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, without further ado, Madam Brewmaster, where are we going to start today?
Gentlemen, let's start with conservatives. Why do people hate conservatives?
Might as well kick her off.
All right, go for it.
All right. So I want to start by saying that this is not all-encompassing of all conservatives. Basically, what we're trying to do here is, if you say, oh, I'm a conservative, someone goes, we're trying to kind of explain why that is. And, we don't want to lump too many people together, but this sentiment is kind of widespread. So people hate you because you claim to be smart, but you don't ask any questions. We look at the Muslim ban or torture, for instance.
Economics.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it on 24. Right? It's good.
Right.
It works. Or mass surveillance, for instance. All these things that are intrusive. No questions. You claim to be strong, but you're super sensitive. He called me a name. Called me a bigot.
Reverse racism. That hurts my feelings. I'm just like you.
Yep. You claim to love the troops. You appropriate money for war. You're fine with that. But nothing about helping out once they get back. Because a meme saying help veterans doesn't do anything.
Well, they want to help veterans, but they also don't want socialized programs.
That would help veterans. You claim to love the Constitution, but just toss aside the part you don't like. How about the Fourth Amendment when it comes to stop and frisk in New York City? Thrown out because it was unconstitutional because of how it was applied. But it's not going to affect me. Just do it because it works, right? How about no one... not mad, happy, in fact, that the Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland didn't get a hearing in Congress.
Yeah, that's great. They took their time with that.
Yeah,
it didn't even happen. They took so long, it didn't happen.
Yeah, just wait for the next administration. No big deal. You claim to love capitalism and say that it provides opportunity for the poor people until the factories move out, which you're mad about now.
Right.
You support Made in America, but you want restrictions to be reduced so that you can pay people less than minimum wage because somehow that'll help the people making less than minimum wage make more money.
Including yourselves, by the way.
Right. You claim that your idea is the future, but everything looks to the past. You have to see, we're here for a reason. It's because we've tried your ideas before. Since you're the conservatives, we've come past that. And we're trying things different now because what you did didn't work.
Right, to that point, the Civil Rights Act, it exists because opportunity didn't actually play out such that people of different religions and races actually had a fair opportunity.
Very interesting. Yes, yes. And on that same note, you actually claim you don't see race until there's a black person who's a main character on a TV show. 24, maybe.
Probably very upset about that.
Yeah, I actually heard Rush Limbaugh talking about James Bond, and I'm going to butcher his name. Idris Elba?
I think that's how it's Idris or Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. You know who I'm talking about. There's talk about him being the next James Bond, and Rush Limbaugh was getting bent out of shape because, I mean, what if Harriet Tubman was played by a white person in a movie? And like the problem is that James Bond isn't a historical figure. His race actually doesn't matter to his character.
Correct.
Whereas if Harriet Tubman were white, things probably wouldn't have gone down the same way. Like, you also don't see it until you think it's overrepresented on the courts. Maybe you're going to be treated unfairly. See, what really happens is you don't see race until you don't see your race. Yeah, and I think you treat anecdotes like they're the same thing as research. So everyone's opinion's equal and valid of the same word. Because I mean, hey, I saw a lazy guy and I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he said, "I'm on welfare." You're like, welfare people are lazy.
They're drug addicts because you knew two who were drug addicts.
Yeah.
So all of them are drug addicts.
That's true. That's true. And like the conservative senator who rails against gay rights until he realized that he has a gay son, and then all of a sudden gay people aren't monsters anymore.
Right.
See, you can't see past your own experiences, but you claim to have vision. You expect people to believe you and take you at your word, but just cast aside the experiences of other people if you don't agree with them. You have an artificially inflated sense of your own self-importance and self-reliance, so much so that you were willing to break hundreds of years of blood and sacrifice that scaffold you to the greatness of this nation because you've convinced yourself you can walk on air. You've fed your emotions with hypocrisy and left your brain to starve. You have become a mass-produced theme park caricature of your former self, and you are convinced you're the Mona Lisa. Next round?
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's good. I'm actually going to jump on some of that when I start talking.
All right. What do you got, my friend?
So I want to make this point. Ryan already made this point, but I do want to say yet again that when we're talking about the conservatives, we're not talking about every single conservative. There are many factions. You got your Tea Party people, you got conservatives, you have Republicans, you have the alt-right, you have just some people who consider themselves conservatives because there's no other bucket to be in. So when we talk about why we hate conservatives or why people hate conservatives, you may reflect some of these or none of these, but you need to understand when they say I hate you because of the way you align, these are some of the reasons that we're talking about today.
The people you align with.
Right. So with that in mind, there are really two kind of major reasons, one of which, the first one, has kind of arisen since the rise of Trump. And it's this idea that they have, the conservatives have lost the ability to reason. All right. See, they don't understand words anymore, and that they have definitions, and that when you put them in a particular order, they create meaning. And when you rearrange them in the same words in a different order, there is different meaning, and there's intent. And arranging words in a sentence, then sentences into a paragraph or a phrase creates context. And they've simply lost control of this reasoning and this logic. They don't understand math and statistics and how they can be used to bolster an argument. And without them, your argument is not compelling, and they can be used to refute an argument. Their brains have debilitated since the rise of Trump, and people hate that because they can't have a discussion with you when that happens. So that's number one. Number two, and this is a larger one, and I don't think a lot of conservatives are going to like this, but it's basically that many of you are just un-American. All right, and you're un-American in two ways.
But they hold a lock on patriotism,
They do. They think they do, but I'm going to demonstrate how that's not true. First of all, they don't love Americans. All right? And Americans are what make America great. I said this in our minimum wage talk, and I'm going to repeat it again. It's the Americans that make America great. And if you don't love Americans and you're not willing to take care of them, you're being un-American. All right? So, in fact, the Republican Party, their platform talks about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence like they're the cornerstones of the Republican Party. Well, those documents, while great and have lofty ideals, they're nothing without Americans demonstrating those ideals, committed to those ideals, protecting and defending those ideals. Otherwise, without that, they're just lofty words on a piece of paper floating about somewhere. All right? It's the Americans that make America great, and conservatives don't seem to care at all about them. They care more about capitalism than America. And I already made that point in the minimum wage discussion, that you can't care about both equally because capitalism doesn't give a damn about Americans. It's happy to watch them fail. And if left unchecked, it certainly lets them fail. It actually consumes them. And there's only a few at the top. There's actually only one at the top of the end of capitalism. And they love that more than Americans. They're happy to ship American jobs across the ocean to somebody else. They're happy to pay Americans less than a living wage. They don't care about minorities. They don't care about the marginalized, and they claim they do, and they put it under this umbrella of opportunity. Like, that's what we need. Listen, opportunity is important, but if you haven't given people an even playing field so they can grasp the opportunity, then it's not really helpful. And I'll give you a demonstration of what I mean here. So Ryan, let's say you are a 7-foot tall guy.
Cool.
And I'm my current height of 5'7". And let's say in America, we each get a basketball every day. And if you dunk that basketball in a standard NBA-sized 10-foot rim, you get money. And if you don't, you don't. Would you say our opportunity is equal? We're both getting a basketball. Is our opportunity equal?
From a very, very academic standpoint, yes.
It's absolutely equal. And that's where the conservatives leave you. Is they're like, there, we gave you opportunity. Is one of us more likely to dunk the basketball than the other?
Well, clearly me.
Would you say you're at an advantage?
I would.
Would you say I'm at a disadvantage?
Compared to me, absolutely.
Sure. So you're going to dunk the basketball. I'm not going to dunk the basketball. Unless what? Do you know what the unless is?
Unless you just work really hard.
No, that's not the unless. No, that's what they want you to believe. No, it's unless I get help. There's an option here that maybe I'm smarter than most, and I realized that there was nothing in the rules that said I can't use a ladder, but that presupposes I find a ladder, or that I have help from friends, and that presupposes I live in a community or have a family that's there to help me. But the bottom line is I need something, and you don't. And what we find is with all that opportunity, you will become wealthy, and I will not. And your wealth will beget wealth, and my poverty will beget poverty. So opportunity is what we're looking for here. We need the ability to grasp the opportunity, which is a level playing field. Now, the other thing they're going to say is, of course I care about Americans. Look at my immigration policies. I'm talking about the Muslim ban, and I'm talking about the people crossing the border. They're saying, we care about Americans. We're trying to protect them from terrorists, criminals, and rapists. But you know that's not true, because if you talk to them and you say, statistically, you don't really have any backing here, the argument they'll come up with is, you wouldn't say that if that was your daughter or your wife or your mother being raped, killed, or blown up. But all that means is they care about their daughter, their wife, their mother. That's who they're worried about. It's selfish. They don't care about mine. They're trying to protect themselves. And they're protecting themselves based on, to your point in your discussion, based on not asking any questions and having anything to back up that reasoning. They do not care about Americans. They largely don't care about people. Let's just get that straight. Number two, they weave religion into politics. And they think that's okay. And I'm going to make this clear. By doing that, they are no different than the Muslim countries that they hate, that oppress women and minorities.
For religious reasons.
For religious reasons. Okay, so if I'm being fair, that's not entirely true. There are three main reasons. There are three things that separate them from those countries. So I'm going to lay them out for you. One, conservatives, the difference between them is when conservatives weave religion into their politics, they're doing it because their God demands them to do so. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, the world would be a better place if they do. Okay. And number three is their God is righteous and they know better.
Okay.
So those are the Oh, I'm sorry. No, the Muslim countries feel the same way. Those aren't differences. They're exactly the same.
I was going to say. That sounds...
So it turns out the only difference is the conservative God is a Christian God. That's the only difference.
And then the white conservative God.
Yes.
Because let's be real. The Muslim God's also conservative.
He's very conservative. And then finally, they do it under this guise of that it's okay because of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And what I mean by that is they think that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is a list of things we're allowed to do, when in fact, they are a list of protections from the government. All right? The government where they're weaving their religion into politics, which, by the way, the First Amendment says Congress shall not establish a religion. And by weaving your religion in, you are doing just that. Now, if they argue that they're not doing that, we go back to my first point, where they've lost the ability to reason. So with that in mind, I'm going to have a recommended reading for them to help them be more likable, since people hate them. And that is the Constitution. Start with the Constitution. Read that. Number 2, any book on reason, logic, truth tables, mathematics, anything like that would be helpful. Mm-hmm. Next round.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Actually, real quick, just thought of something. You mentioned weaving in religion, and that's one of the biggest things that people on the conservative side talk about hating. They're like, we don't want Muslims because they're trying to weave their religion in, right? And the thing that's really different about that, well, obviously we know the conservatives are trying to do it too. They're trying to weave it in. But the difference is that the Muslims can't, because they make up 1% of the United States. You can want all you want. Have a great time winning it over 1% of the U.S. The conservatives, I think it's 82% of the United States identifies as Christian.
That would be the majority.
So it is the majority.
Yeah.
So you actually have a disproportionate amount of power to do what you say, whether they want to do it or not.
That's right. And you, in fact, do.
All right.
All right.
Next talking point?
Yeah, next talking point. Madam Brewmaster.
Why do people hate liberals?
Yeah, so before I begin the discussion, we did this for a conservative talk, but I just want to point out that when we were talking about liberals and why people hate them, we're not talking about all liberals. I have liberal friends. They don't necessarily represent the things I'm talking about. And there's different groups of liberals, right? So you have liberals, you have Democrats, you have progressives, hell, you even have socialists, green, communists. I mean, so you have all these people on the left, and they may or may not represent the things I'm talking about. But again, the idea is if you tell someone you are liberal or left or some combination of those things, and they look at you and they hate you, it's because some large group of people are doing the things that I'm going to talk about.
There's some kind of overlap in there.
Right. So the first one I'm going to start with, it's actually kind of a small group, but it's very pronounced right now. And those are the college kids. All right. These are people that largely cannot hold themselves accountable for their own feelings. They have to blame someone else. They need trigger warnings. They need safe places. They revolt when someone with a differing viewpoint comes to talk to them. And they're just pains in the ass, and nobody likes them, okay? And frankly, the liberals don't even hold them accountable. I mean, I'm sure they don't appreciate it, but they don't really say much about it, at least not according to media. But that's just a small group. Let's talk about a larger group here. So one of the things I want to talk about is it was really hard to get me to this point. This was a really hard talking point for me, because I've said this to you before. If the worst thing you can say about a liberal is that they just want to help people, it's pretty good to be a liberal. If that's the worst thing anybody can say about you is you want to help people too much, it's pretty good being you. Now, there are things that people do hate even associated with that. Largely, liberals want to help people using other people's money, right? For instance, so people hate that. People hate the fact that that liberals tend to have an air of moral superiority and even intellectual superiority at this point. They are unlikable know-it-alls. They are preachy. And when I was going through all these things, my goal is to kind of boil this up to something that ties it all together. That's what, when I'm doing these talking points, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yep.
So I went through all that and I said, oh, this is it. They would rather be right than be effective. They spend so much time telling you why you're wrong. They don't realize that they need partners to be effective in our world.
That's really good.
Thank you. But it turns out that's not even really why people hate them. Because here's the problem with that. I started thinking about that. It presupposes that there's a way to be effective as a liberal. So they're going about it wrong. So I started thinking about how could they go about it. And it turns out there's no way to go about it. And the reason is because the reason people hate liberals is because they don't care about what liberals care about. That's it. And it's largely people. Okay? They don't care what liberals have to say about people. So liberals are talking, and being preachy, and all the other people want them to do is shut the hell up. And it bothers them. And that's why they hate them, because they just keep repeating themselves in different ways. So let me give you an example. Let's think about Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to give it to you the best way the conversation in my mind could have gone.
Okay.
Hey, did you know black people were dying? Yeah, so? Well, don't you think Black Lives Matter? Well, all lives matter. Okay, but did you notice they're dying at like a higher rate than other people? Well, cops are dying too. You see, the whole thing was deflection.
Right.
There was no conversation about black lives because they don't care.
Right.
They don't think there's a problem. Black Lives Matter, I guess, is kind of their response to that. They don't care what the liberals have to say. Look at the immigration ban or the Muslim ban, right? If you can't go up to someone and say, listen, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are dying because of an illegal executive order, which clearly targets a religious group, and they say they don't want to talk about it with you, they don't care. And they don't care about people at that point. They just don't care. And you talking makes them hate you. Let's look at immigration reform. They don't want to have a discussion about that. They just want to talk about rapists and criminals and building a wall. Sure, we all agree there needs to be comprehensive reform somewhere, but it's rapists, criminals, build a wall. They do not care.
3 things is comprehensive.
Right. They don't care about what it takes to protect us from that. They think the wall will. Which is ludicrous, but they think the wall will protect us. And they don't care. So stop talking liberals because they don't care. LGBTQ community, they're looking for equality there. Not only do they not care, they actually try to pass laws that discriminate and marginalize them further. They really don't care. Women's rights. The Supreme Court ruled on Roe versus Wade over 40 years ago, and they're still trying to come up with loopholes to get around the Supreme Court. They do not care. And you talking to them sounds like a gong, 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 and they hate you for it. Because you think they don't understand. They understand. They just don't care. Not one iota. And so you start preaching to them because you think, well, maybe I'm not being intellectual enough. Maybe I can bring them up to my level. No, they don't care. So, as I said with the Republicans, I have a recommended reading, and that is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Ooh. I don't think it'll make them care more, but it'll certainly make you more likable. Next round.
That was real good.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you, my friend.
So I hope you forgive me again. I'm going to reiterate what he said. By no means is this all Democrats. I think or all liberals. I think it's even less all liberals because if you know anything about progressives or liberals, there are so many little factions and groups. They're so all over the place and they never talk to each other. So it's really hard to get all of them together on one thing. But it's still sort of the pervasive idea that, oh my God.
You just want to strangle
them. You just want to strangle them. So because of that, I actually went a little bit more specific. I went specifically Democrats.
Okay.
And I mean, not like voting for Hillary Clinton doesn't make you a Democrat. I mean, being a Democratic, like stalwart, like you follow the party lines.
The platform.
The platform.
Because they have one.
Yeah, you're in tow with the party. I went with that.
Okay.
This is why people hate you. Forgive me. Was up late trying to type stuff up. I don't have everything memorized here. But
I hate you.
It's fair.
Well, you can stop watching. And we're listening if you're listening.
So here's the thing. You claim to be a party of the working class, and you used to be a part of the working class. Now you're just a party of corporates. You're a bunch of corporate sellouts. You used to be a party of unions. You've gone to Goldman Sachs, and you've sold out your base. you claim to be a party of peace and human rights, and then you nominate a war hawk. You, if you look at the trade policies, if you're a people, a party of the people, but then you support trade policies that favor corporations over their employees. What goods and services can be traded freely without taxation, but make sure to keep the people in line so that wages can't be raised. Something you talked about. You're an intellectual, and statistically speaking, considerably more liberals and people who align with the Democrats go to college, and whatever. So yes, let's assume yes, you are more intellectual.
Okay.
What do you do with that? You belittle people.
Yep.
You talk down to them. You tell them how stupid they are. You tell them, if you don't think like me, you're wrong. You don't listen to what they have to say. So what are you doing with that? You don't keep the perspective that you didn't always know, so maybe you need to teach somebody. Maybe you need to look at it as a learning experience. No, you just talk down. And you go off on people if they use the wrong words.
In fact, they paint them into a corner.
Yes.
By the way.
I know we have talked about this. We have known people who will paint someone into a corner for using the wrong words, even though they're probably someone who's going to be your ally.
Right.
But you used the wrong word because you're not as familiar with the subject, so off with your head.
Right.
You pretend that people's traditions are important. And here's the thing, having a tradition isn't inherently good for society, but it's inherently important to that person. We have traditions for a reason. They bring us to our heritage. They're where we come from. And you pretend like they have no value. You claim to understand the human condition, but overlook the humanity of those who disagree with you. You've become Republicans who favor women's rights.
Yep.
Think about this. Under the Obama administration, the foreign intervention policies, bailing out the banks and companies, not the people, and healthcare reforms are all Republican ideas. Everything has shifted to the right. So you look at these things. Yeah, we can talk about these later, but I'm kind of going through. For instance, the housing crisis, when everything went down. I mean, yes, we know this started under Bush, but this is stuff that went into policy under Obama. A lot of people were affected by that. And for a party who says you're for the people, you sure as hell bailed out a lot of banks and a lot of corporations and didn't give a damn about the people who were losing their homes. And it wasn't just your supporters. It was people you could have won over. You claim to support the will of the people, but you favor the advancement of your own power structure. Case in point, Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
You know what? I'm not saying that she is not a qualified candidate. I'm not saying that maybe she wouldn't. I'm not saying she wouldn't be a good president. Maybe she would. But with the amount of shit that she had going on, you thought she was the best choice. Guess what happened? And this is why people hate you the most of all. You compromise the values you claim to have so that you can win. And you lose. Donald fucking Trump was the nominee. Donald Trump was the nominee. And you lost. And here's the thing. It's not because more people wanted him to win.
Right.
A lot more people wanted your candidate to win, but you couldn't figure out how to win the game. You are ineffectual. And now you've got Steve Bannon in the White House. You've got Sean Spicer as the voice of the White House. You've got Rex Tillerson, an oil tycoon, as the voice of the United States abroad. And here's something else. This is how ineffectual and impotent you are. There were 55 senators who were Democrats when Obama came in over his course, and now we're down to 46. There were 256 seats in the House. You're down to 194. You were 28 governorships. Now you're at 16. And in the course of the Obama administration, across all of the across all of the state legislatures, you've lost 958 seats. And who are you talking about? Now, after this monumental failure, you're looking at replacing party leadership, and who are you looking to? You're looking to, longtime Democratic stalwarts, the architects of this miserable loss? This is why people hate you. You have become a delusional failure who is counting on the changing demographics to save you because you're so far ahead of your time that the future will catch up. You're so politically correct that you alienate your potential allies as if they aren't enlightened because they feel differently, because they use the wrong words. You're planning to win your 6th Super Bowl, but you've lost sight of the 16 regular season games in front of you waiting to be played. Oh, and by the way, you're a rookie. Last call?
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Amen. Preach.
Thanks for watching.
Absolutely. Thank you. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Share. Like.
We've got a Facebook page now. Like us on Facebook.
Yeah.
We'll keep you posted with fun updates that are Facebooky.
Yep. Yep. And we love you. Just know that.
We do love you.
Till next time. It's just beer and politics.
Cheers.